Number 8. Sakina Thompson. A 23-year-old woman from Tamarack, Florida was killed on July 13, 2022 at her apartment complex by 28-year-old Sakina Thompson. The Broward Sheriff's Office reported that Thompson was arrested by New York City police in Queens Springfield Gardens neighborhood, but authorities failed to mention what led up to the woman's capture. Thompson is being charged with first-degree murder. It's not currently known if she'll be extradited or not. The victim was identified as Kayla Hodgson by family members and loved ones. An arrest affidavit obtained by Peter O'Dench from CBS 4's news team said that Thompson was demonstrating a depraved mind without regard for human life. It also explains that the killer acted with intent to cause death and that the incident was in fact premeditated. Hodgson was stabbed to death by Thompson with some type of sharp object, but it's unclear from the reports if it was a knife or not. The murder happened at the Tamarack Village apartment complex, and police responded to the scene after getting a 911 call about an unresponsive woman. Unfortunately, by the time paramedics got there, Hodgson was already dead. 2 days after the killing, a warrant was issued for Thompson's arrest, putting the minds of several residents at the apartment complex at ease. Oddly enough, there's not a clear connection between the two women involved, but the way the murder was carried out resembles a passionate crime. If this were a robbery gone wrong, a gun would have been a more obvious weapon, but typically, only heightened emotion can push someone to physically kill another person with their own hands. It's just speculation at the moment, but there's a good chance Hodgson and Thompson were involved romantically. The case is ongoing, but Thompson is currently behind bars as she waits to be sentenced. Number 7. Danny Hernandez. In late 2022, a California man was accused of storming into his ex-girlfriend's house and killing her new partner. According to the local news, on Monday, October 3rd, 38-year-old Los Angeles resident Danny Hernandez showed up unannounced at his ex's home in North Long Beach right before 10:30 a.m. Shortly after arriving, Danny shot 28-year-old Ocasio Koo to death. When officers responded, the victim was found with gunshot wounds to his upper body. Ocasio was rushed to the hospital by the Long Beach Fire Department, but his injuries were too severe and he passed away. The motive for the killing is still under investigation, but it's possible the suspect was jealous of the woman's new lover. After the deadly shooting, Danny went to pick his 5-year-old son, whom he shares with his ex, up from school. He was arrested on October 4th when police received a tip that he was at a residence in LA. At around 1 a.m., authorities showed up at the home they thought he was at. Luckily, the young child was found safe, while Danny was taken into custody. The killer's 39-year-old brother was also arrested for helping the suspect evade arrest. He was charged with 1 count of accessory to a crime, while Danny was hit with full-blown murder charges. He's currently being held on a $2 million bond as he waits for his next court date. Number 6. Taisha Wallington. A woman from Macomb County, Michigan was charged with murder after allegedly killing her ex-boyfriend in late 2022. The Macomb County Prosecutor's Office reported that 35-year-old Taisha Wallington and a 36-year-old victim were fighting at a mobile home in Bruce Township on November 18, 2022. Unfortunately, the altercation quickly turned violent when Taisha shot and killed her former lover. Shortly after, another resident in the Springbrook Estates mobile home park called the cops and complained that there was a man bleeding nearby. A child was also screaming uncontrollably. When police got to the scene, they found that the minor was unharmed and returned them to their father, who happened to be working at the time. After the shooting, it was revealed that the Macomb County Sheriff's Office had been called to the home multiple times over the past year. The victim, who was shot and killed, had a pending court case against Taisha for domestic violence after a previous arrest in September 2022. The case is still playing out in court, but Taisha was hit with a second-degree murder charge as well as a felony firearm violation. If convicted, she could face the maximum sentence of life in prison. She has since been arraigned and is currently held on a $1 million bond. Taisha's virtual probable cause conference was scheduled for January 24, 2023, but there have been no recent updates released. Number 5. Jared Dicus. A newlywed wife that had been married for a little less than 4 months was found dead and decapitated by Texas authorities in early 2023. The 21-year-old's body was discovered in the couple's home, but her head was not at the scene, according to Sheriff Troy Goodry. He described it as a truly gruesome sight and said that the residence was completely covered in blood everywhere you looked. The woman's husband, 21-year-old Jared Dicus, was questioned by police and eventually confessed to the killing. The wife's name hasn't been publicly revealed by authorities, but a post on social media by the county judge who married the couple on October 21, 2022, identified her as Angie Diaz. Angie's head was later located on the couple's property, and so was the alleged murder weapon, a knife. After making a full confession, Dicus was officially charged with murder, and he could face other pending charges as well, based on what Sheriff Goodry told the Post. The killer's family members were the ones who called police deputies to the home, a small cottage in northwest Houston. Angie was believed to have been dead since about 11 p.m., the night before her body was discovered. Apparently, there had been past disturbance-type calls to the residence in the past, but nothing that had escalated to this extreme level of violence. Angie was described as undocumented by Sheriff Goodry, and she had Nicaraguan citizenship. But the woman's posts on social media showed her to be actively involved in fitness and featured several photos of her and Dicus together. The man has yet to be sentenced for the terrible crime, but he's currently being held in jail on a $1 million bond. Number 4. Shayna Huber. A woman from Kentucky claimed she acted in self-defense after killing her boyfriend in October 2012. According to several news outlets, Shayna Huber was convicted of murder in 2015 and found guilty again in 2018 at a retrial. The woman's former boyfriend and victim, Ryan Carter Poston, was found murdered in his Highland Heights home. Shayna's defense team argued that Ryan, a lawyer, was extremely abusive, but the jury didn't believe the claim. Prosecutors alleged that on the night of his death, Ryan planned to leave Shayna, and he already had a date set up with a new woman, Audrey Bolt, a former Miss Ohio Beauty Queen contestant. But before he could make it to the date, Shayna visited him at his house, and as Campbell County Assistant Commonwealth Attorney said at trial, Ryan had two options. He could either leave his condo that night as Shayna's boyfriend, or in a body bag. In the end, Ryan firmly stood his ground, but Shayna snapped and ended up shooting him a total of 6 times. During a police interrogation, the woman showed almost no remorse for her actions. She was even caught on video during an interview, dancing and singing to the tune of Amazing Grace. She also told officers, "I gave him the nose job he wanted," after telling them how one of the last conversations she had with Ryan was about him wanting the cosmetic procedure. Shayna was initially handed 40 years behind bars, but after she was convicted again at her retrial, the jury recommended she got life in prison instead. Her defense attorney, David Eldridge, asked for a minimum sentence of 20 years though, citing Shayna's young age at the time of the crime, even claiming that his client was mentally unstable. But this request wasn't granted, so Shayna will now spend the rest of her days locked in a cell. Number 3. Stephen Geraldo. In late 2022, a 36-year-old man from New York was accused of running over his estranged wife with an SUV while the couple's 3 children watched in horror. Stephen Geraldo was charged with attempted murder, reckless endangerment, assault, and child endangerment for the automobile incident. In a statement released by Melinda Katz, Queens District Attorney, she said, "The brutality of the attack stirs heartbreak and outrage in all of us." She also explained that the situation was only made worse by the fact that the pair's 3 children could see their father taking violent actions against their mother. The victim, 41-year-old Sophia Geraldo, suffered severe neurological and physical injuries as a result, including a punctured liver and broken leg, and at the moment she's still being treated and is making a recovery at the hospital. Sophia filed for divorce in early 2022, and she often describes herself as a domestic violence survivor on social media, even hosting a podcast where she talks about the problems in her marriage. Authorities reported that Stephen told his kids, ages 11, 9, and 6, to keep their seatbelts on just before he stepped on the gas and struck Sophia in the driveway. The SUV then rolled onto its side, and immediately after, Stephen crawled out of the window and made his way over to Sophia. He wasn't done yet though, so he took out a knife and stabbed her while she was already down and severely injured. Stephen is currently in jail and is being held without bail. His next court date was scheduled for January 12, 2023, but that day has come and passed and no further updates on the case seem to have been released. Number 2. Flush away the pain. In 2019, a Taiwanese woman from the township of Hokau told her ex-husband, "If I can't have it, no one else can." After making this dramatic statement, she cut off his genitals and doused them in acid. The scorned woman, who's been identified as Ms. Lee, allegedly seduced her former lover before mutilating him with a pair of scissors on July 24th. The victim, simply known as Mr. Chen, was left with just 1 centimeter (0.4 inches) of his genitals after she was done. When the gruesome attack was over, the 58-year-old woman tried to take her own life by swallowing 40 sleeping pills. When authorities arrived, Ms. Lee was found unconscious. They rushed her to the hospital along with her ex-husband, though, and she miraculously survived. Mr. Chen's manhood couldn't be retrieved since Ms. Lee had apparently flushed it down the toilet. Chang Chen-Ye, the head of urology at the National Taiwan University Hospital, said that his penis couldn't have been reattached even if the police did find it. He explained that the man's genitalia would have been contaminated with harmful bacteria and that it was extremely unlikely he'd have full sexual function ever again. Reports on the incident claimed that the couple had divorced about a month before the assault, but for 2 years Mr. Chen was jobless and fully supported by Ms. Lee's earnings. The woman only snapped when she realized that her ex had also been cheating on her throughout their marriage, on top of relying on her financially. Police were waiting for the pair to recover so they could get each of their written statements before detaining and formally charging Ms. Lee. But little else has been revealed about the case, and it's unclear if she was ever arrested or charged with anything. As extreme as her reaction was, we can definitely see why she was upset. Number 1. Princeadav. On November 15, 2022, an Indian woman's dead body was found in the Azamgarh district of Uttar Pradesh. The victim, Aradhana Prajapati, was discovered by locals inside a well. She was barely clothed and seemed to have been dead for at least a few days. The man accused of killing her is named Princeadav. He apparently had helped planning the murder with several family members, including his own parents and cousin Savesh. The family was upset at Yadav's ex-girlfriend because she'd married someone other than him earlier that year. As reported by PTI, the couple had been in a relationship for about 2 years, but when he went overseas for work, she was married off to another man. News agency PTI reported that Yadav took his ex to a temple on his bike 6 days before her body was found on November the 9th. When they reached their destination, he strangled Aradhana to death in a sugarcane field with help from Savesh. It wasn't enough for them to just leave the body there though, so they cut her into pieces. They then packed her remains into a polythene bag before dropping her into the well she was discovered in. The woman's head, on the other hand, was thrown into a pond by Yadav's cousin. Once he was identified as a suspect in the case, Yadav was involved in a shootout with the police where he sustained a bullet wound. The authorities reported that the man had concealed a country-made pistol at the location where Aradhana's head had been disposed of, which is where the altercation with the cops happened. Yadav was taken there by officers so they could retrieve the victim's head, but they didn't expect him to have a gun. In the end, though, he was arrested and is currently in jail, but the case is ongoing. Yadav's parents, aunts, uncles, cousin, and sister were also booked for their role in conspiring to murder Aradhana, but Savesh remains at large. If you found out your partner of 5 years was cheating on you the entire time, would you get back at him by slashing his tires? Or would you rather start dating his best friend? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to subscribe to the channel to see more. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.